Good morning, everybody. My name is Brandon Woodard, and I'm the state representative for District 30 in the Kansas House of Representatives. That includes parts of Lenexa and Olathe, Kansas, basically from 87th Street down to 127th Street, in between Renner and Flum. I'm coming to you virtually this morning. As most of you know, I host a monthly listening session over coffee and donuts down at Dayline Donuts in Lenexa. And so while I don't have any donuts to share, I do have my coffee. So make sure to grab yourself some caffeine to get through this. And since we couldn't meet in person, I wanted to be able to provide some updates on some of the steps that the legislature took before we left in mid-March, and then what the legislative leadership and the governor and her administration have been up to help Kansans get through this really unprecedented tough time with the coronavirus. As you might know, the legislature did adjourn on Thursday, March 19th. We passed a number of emergency bills before we got out the door to help Kansans get through this, but we were originally scheduled to go through Friday, April 3rd. So we would have just now been wrapping up our regular session. We're scheduled to go back at the end of April, but more to come on that, and we'll see if we're actually able to do that. I think the coronavirus might prevent going back in late April. But as many of you know, as we've talked about in past listening sessions, up until the point where the coronavirus started getting to the United States and really starting to impact Kansas, we knew that a number of the big key legislative priorities were on hold. In early February, the House blocked the constitutional amendment dealing with abortion, and after that, the Senate and House leadership kind of just paused some of the major issues as they worked to try to get the votes to pass that amendment. As we've discussed and I've outlined in monthly newsletters and weekly newsletters, I voted no, and we can talk about the reasons for that another time. But with that, most of the major issues, medical marijuana, Medicaid expansion, sports wagering, were all kind of held up. Looking at tax structure in Kansas, were held up as they tried to hold the votes. And then out of nowhere came the coronavirus, and I don't think anyone could have predicted it hit as quickly as it did here in Kansas. But I've been very impressed with the governor and the administration, as well as the legislature in those last couple of weeks coming together to get Kansas to a place where we can get through this. So before leaving Topeka, the House and Senate passed a number of emergency bills that had disaster and emergency relief in them to help Kansans get through the tough times. First and foremost, that week, one of the top highlights is that we did pass a budget. It is a kind of a bare bones budget in case the legislature cannot return for our veto session, the wrap-up session, which is scheduled April 27th through May 15th. That budget did include about $65 million in disaster and emergency funding, which has allowed the governor and the administration to look at small business assistance and several other programs to begin the process of not only preventing and stopping the spread of coronavirus, but helping to test and treat patients to make sure that we can do everything we can here in Kansas to limit the spread. We also passed an extension when it comes to unemployment. Previously, Kansas limited unemployment benefits to 16 weeks in a benefit year. The legislature went ahead and extended that to 26 weeks through the end of 2020. So what that does is allow someone who is unemployed because of the coronavirus, or as we saw some of the airline industry impacted down in Wichita and Sedgwick County, this extends that benefit from 16 now to 26 weeks. And just a couple of days after we passed that, the U.S. Congress and the President signed into law the CARES Act, which also includes a weekly benefit beyond what Kansas is able to give out each week. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. Unemployment's been a hot topic right now. Unfortunately, the reality is that many Kansans have lost their jobs due to this unprecedented pandemic. And so we're working to navigate that. I know that the Kansas Department of Labor and the U.S. Department of Labor are working tirelessly to get those systems and programs implemented so that Kansans can have the resources to pay the bills that don't stop coming. The governor issued on March 12th a state of disaster emergency declaration. In Kansas, the governor can declare a state of emergency that lasts for 15 days. And so what the legislature did was extended that until May 1st and gave the legislative coordinating council the authority to extend that for 30-day periods. hopefully we can continue our social distancing and by the end of May won't have to keep extending that beyond that, but at this point nobody really knows where that's going. This declaration allows Kansas to qualify for federal funding and a number of other resources from the federal government. And so that'll help us to combat the spread of the coronavirus and to be eligible for federal funding to support Kansans and Kansas businesses who are struggling during the pandemic. We also passed an education extension. So in order to empower the Department of Education and our school districts to make sure that they are still going into online learning and making sure that we're not penalizing students because they're not in the classroom right now. Kansas has an 1,100 hour classroom hour rule each year. We just reaffirmed the Department of Education's ability to waive those classroom hours, as most students, all students right now, are learning online and through the phone or whatever methods work for them. Unfortunately, we don't have ubiquitous internet coverage throughout the entire state, and so several of our students are having to find new ways to learn at home. And then finally, we also extended the court's ability to allow the Kansas Supreme Court to make necessary updates to court proceedings online or delay when necessary due to COVID-19. So since then, the governor has issued several executive orders. If you go to governor.kansas.gov, that's governor.kansas.gov, you can find a number of those executive orders and the text there. I'll highlight just a couple of them. Some of the biggest ones: on March 17th, the governor ordered that all school buildings remain closed for the rest of the spring session. That doesn't mean schools are closed, but it does mean that the school buildings that students were learning in are closed. And that happened during where many of our students in Kansas were already on spring break. And so she commissioned a study among some of our brightest teachers, many of whom were Kansas Teachers of the Year, brought them all together to say, okay, how can we provide some framework to continue our learning, move it online or to whatever system works in that part of the state, to make sure that our students are continuing to learn and continuing to their education while they're at home in these tough times. We actually just learned yesterday that over 20 states have reached out to the state of Kansas to model their plans after ours. And so turns out when you empower teachers to figure out how to be innovative, to continue teaching, it works out pretty well so far. The stay-at-home order, I know many of you have reached out about that. Johnson County's Health Department issued a stay-at-home order along with the Core 4, which is Johnson County, Wyandotte County, Jackson County in Missouri, and then Kansas City, Missouri. They all came together to say, we're having far too much spread of coronavirus here. How can we work together to make sure that people are staying at home when they can and only going out when absolutely necessary? And we've seen that across the country and around the globe, these social distancing stay-at-home orders have really helped make an impact to not overwhelm our healthcare system. So that went into effect on March 24th. Just a few days later, the governor examined the spread and listened to her health experts at the Kansas Department of Health and Environment and realized that while more than 1/2 of the population of the state of Kansas were already under local stay-at-home orders, that each one of them were different, that she had to go ahead and make the difficult decision that all of the state of Kansas needed to follow this as we saw the spread continue to grow in counties across the state. That's currently scheduled to expire on April 19th. As of yesterday, we didn't have updates on whether or not officially that would be extended. Based on the projections that Kansas is looking at a March 26th or 27th peak in the number of cases of coronavirus, I would bet that we're going to see that extended at least through the end of the month, if not beyond that. So I'll continue to be urging the governor that Kansas needs to stay safe. We're seeing positive impacts based on social distancing, limiting gatherings to 10 or fewer people, making sure we're washing our hands, all the stuff that we're continuing to hear all day long on every news channel, from every elected official, everywhere you go. And so let's do our part to work together to see what we can do to limit the spread. Every day we're saving lives. Essential businesses was one of them too. The governor had an executive order that outlined the Kansas Essential Functions Framework. There we go. KEFF, the Kansas Essential Function Framework, which outlines which businesses and services are essential and which are not essential in detail. And so if you have questions about whether your business is deemed essential, you can send an email to keff@ks.gov. That's keff@ks.gov. And you can get some information about and clarity about whether your business is essential or not. So where things are at now, I've spent a lot of my time, I am back to full-time at my day job working from home, but also fielding a number of calls from constituents who are navigating the processes. The number one thing I'm hearing from people in our district is about unemployment. Unemployment. People are sitting on hold on the phones for hours and hours. They are trying to go online to apply for their benefits, their weekly benefits, and the website crashes. To be honest, this system is over 40 years old. It's older than I am. And the department was actually in the middle of upgrading their system when the coronavirus came to Kansas. And so it really highlights the need for advances in our technology here in the state. On Monday alone, the system received over 1 million phone calls. People are calling, not getting through, hanging up and calling again. And that's really leading to this overwhelming surge in our system that just frankly can't handle it. So if you or someone you know here in our district has become unemployed, please reach out to me. I can help field and troubleshoot some of the issues that they're going through. And if we need to loop in the Kansas Department of Labor to resolve the issues, let's do that. As your state representative and your state senators, and we're all here to help. And unlike our counterparts in Congress, we don't have staff that help us with that. But we do have real heroes at the Department of Labor, Department of Commerce, and the different areas that we're helping constituents navigate through right now. And we can help you. So do reach out. Just in the past 3 weeks, there have been more than 130,000 initial claims for employment. So to put that in perspective, Kansas has a population of about 3 million people. So a number of our Kansans are suffering and hurting right now. So be sure to reach out to your loved ones. Again, if you know someone who needs assistance navigating the unemployment process, have them reach out to their state representative or their state senator. They can find their contact information at www.ksledge.lookup.org. And they can type in their address, find their phone number and email address. Keep in mind that we're not in Topeka right now. So in addition to the official account, also include their personal and their official emails, or call them at home if you can. So if you need assistance, again, like I said, reach out to me. Leading up to this, I took a number of questions via email and our Facebook page that people had questions about things like the status of Medicaid expansion, changes in our tax structure, solar energy, LGBTQ non-discrimination, medical marijuana, all sorts of issues. And I'm just going to be honest with you all, we don't even know if we're going to go back for the wrap-up session. And so many of these issues are currently on pause. If we do go back to Topeka, I believe that there's a number of issues that I really want to see get done. But quite frankly, the state is going to be in such a tough economic situation with our decrease in revenues because people aren't able to work right now. They're not paying income taxes. Our businesses are laying people off. They're not generating as much revenue and taxes as we would normally see. And so there are a number of key projects that, of course, we all want to see get done. But frankly, right now, we have to focus on getting Kansans back to work when it's safe, making sure that those who have become unemployed have the resources to keep their families fed and housed. But we absolutely must pass Medicaid expansion. We would pay for 10% of the cost of it. The federal government covers 90% of the cost of expansion. And while it wouldn't go into effect until January 1 of 2021, it's going to be absolutely critical to helping us address the long-term health effects. Unless we come up with a miracle vaccine before January, which given typical timelines isn't necessarily possible, then we're facing a real crisis for the months ahead. And so we want to make sure that as we look at the long-term impact, we're not only making sure that we can treat and keep our Kansans safe so that when it is time to go back to work, they're able to do so. But I also think we must look at, if we go back, looking at anything that would generate additional revenue. We're looking at things like sports wagering or collecting sales tax on internet purchases in the same way that we do if you go to your local business in your district or in your community, we've got to make sure that any sort of legislation that we've put off that could help Kansas recover from this pandemic, I think it's absolutely critical. So, like I said, I'm here to help you. In these crazy times, please know that we are here to help. As your state elected officials, we can assist you and your family or your business get through some of the bureaucracy to get that assistance from the Department of Commerce, the Department of Labor, or navigate some of the impacts that people are going through right now. So again, if I'm not your state representative, please go to ksledgelookup.org to find your state senator and your state representative. They can be helpful in connecting you with the liaisons within the agencies in Kansas that are working to get Kansans back to work, that are working to get them their unemployment benefits, and a number of other issues. So, frankly, at this point, just give me a call just to talk if you need to. The last thing I got several questions about was the federal stimulus rebate checks. Those are from the Federal CARES Act. If you want to know more information, send me an email and I can give you the breakdown that we got from our federal delegation. For the most part, if you're making $75,000 or less and filed a 2018 or 2019 tax return, you're going to get a $1,200 check. Couples making less than $150,000 will get a $2,400 check and $500 per dependent minor. And so if you have questions, it's a sliding scale. If your income is slightly higher than that, do send me an email. I can connect you with the right folks. If you don't file an income tax return because you are on Social Security, you are already set to get that check. If you filed your tax return in 2018 and 2019 and included your direct deposit information when you either paid your taxes or got your tax refund, you're all set. If not, I've seen that the IRS is working on an internet portal to set that up where people can go ahead and get all of that information inputted so they can be in that second phase of stimulus checks. And if you are not and you filed by paper or get your tax refund by mail, it's going to be another couple of weeks beyond that. So like I said, send me an email, send your state representative or state senator an email. We're here to help. In the meantime, hang in there, stay safe, stay home, wash your hands, all the stuff we're supposed to be doing right now, and together we're going to get through this. Thanks so much for joining and for your questions. I look forward to seeing you all again soon.